Hey class, happy Wednesday. Doug Brown here. Wanted to check in and just tell you how proud I am of you for all the hard work that you're putting into the class this week. Thank you very much for going that extra mile. You're doing a great job. Working on your assignments tomorrow. Today's Wednesday, so Thursday I'll be trying to get all your assignments graded. Got them in early last week, so I'm working on getting them to you tomorrow or Friday as quickly as possible. So this week we have a very good discussion going. We are pretty much exploring terrorism and state-sponsored terrorism, and I want you to do me a favor, just take a look at some of those examples. What we're doing with state-sponsored terrorism is really taking a look at how states, governments, if you will, sponsors terrorism and why they do that. Now, there's a lot of states that do that. Obviously, when we talk about a state, we're talking about a government, a nation, a country, not Alabama or New Jersey or something, but about some of those different governments that sponsor terrorism. So we've seen that in the past. Iran, for example, has been accused of doing that. So in order to get a better understanding of that, I'd encourage you to take a look at the Department of State's list of different countries that are on that have been accused and found to have sponsored terrorism. And so what these states do is they'll either send operatives out, they'll send agents out to carry out different acts of terrorism, or they'll find some groups that they'll sponsor. There's been some accusation about Al Qaeda in the past, and Bin Laden's group being sponsored by some rich Saudi Arabians and some, the nation of Iran, and now we have ISIS. We have some of the same accusations going there, not just who's funding them in the case of individuals or organizations, but also some of those different countries. And when you take a look at that state-sponsored terrorism, don't just consider who's doing it, but think about sharing why they do it. Think about sharing why they're sending money, why they're sending agents and operatives and that sort of thing. What's the purpose of a country supporting terrorism, some of those terroristic acts? What's interesting is that these nations do everything they possibly can most of the time to stay disconnected. So they may send money, they may send agents, third-party agents, contractors, etc., but to do everything possible to keep the world from knowing that they actually sponsor terrorism for whatever reason. Just like 9/11, we know that Al Qaeda, Bin Laden, those individuals were involved with that, but some of that money, some of that funding, some of the support, the logistics, that sort of thing, may very well have been state sponsored. So why do we do that? Again, consider sharing that. Now, one of the things that always comes up in our discussion on state terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism, is the United States. I've had some students always point out that the United States sponsors terrorism, and or they'll ask that question. Well, the bottom line is, as you can tell from your reading, is yes, the United States does sponsor acts of terrorism. Again, depending on the opinion, one's opinion on that. So what does that mean? Why would we do that when we are constantly sharing our complaints, constantly, fighting terrorism on a global scale? Just like any other state, there's a reason, and that is to take down a regime, to encourage the buildup of a regime, to change the political climate, etc. And that's one of the reasons that we do that. For example, in Afghanistan, when the Russians were in Afghanistan, which many of you may be too young to remember, we actually sponsored acts of terrorism and sponsored some of the groups over there to fight the Russians. And so that could be considered a state-sponsored act of terrorism in the case of the United States sponsoring some of those different groups. So something just to think about. Take a look at Israel. Take a look at the Palestinians. There's lots of different ones that you can take a look at and share. So when you look at that, make sure that when you take a look at the list and put together your discussion this week, please make sure you check your spelling. Make sure you include support in the form of citations and references at the end. Please use the feedback that I've given you in the weeks past and post it in the announcements, those examples of what the discussion board should look like. So you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. If you have any questions, let me know. It should be a great work. Happy Wednesday. I'll see you throughout the rest of the week. If you need me, give me a call.